I on here? Yeah, I'm still there. You go ahead. Give me 1, 10, 9.
1, 2, 3.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Just being paranoid. All right, we left off
Where were
middle
we?
school, high school years.
Oh, middle school. Yeah, there weren't an awful lot of things that come out of the middle school. Other than some good friends, of course, like Jack, who stayed with me for all the way through until I lost him a few years ago. He and his, in fact, his family kind of adopted me. I used to spend so much time in the house. I used to eat dinner there frequently and spent some time down the shore with the family. They were a nice group. They were nice people. She and his sister, I think Joan, was about a year ahead of us. So, and that was another bunch of gearheads because she got engaged to this fellow named Bill Quinn, who I guess Bill must have been about 6'6", 6'7", big guy. And he and his friends all worked on cars. The Quinn's house was, doesn't mean much to you probably, it's just off Springfield Road, beautiful big single home. This big backyard, and it was just filled with cars. Cars and parts and, people working till 2 and 3 in the morning, tearing out engines, and these guys were serious. These guys were really serious about cars.
When did you get your first car? Was that high school or was that after high school?
That was high school. About a year, I guess, before I left high school. I bought it with my own money. I still have a picture of it around somewhere. I don't know if I showed you or not.
Is this the Mercury?
1950 Mercury, yeah.
We have a picture.
Yes. Yeah, that was cool. Unfortunately, the car wasn't anything great to begin with, but there was nobody to drive it. My father had his car, and Jack would stop down once in a while and run it for me, but So anyway, the engine sat and the block cracked one winter. So that didn't last. But it was fun. It ran. It was a nice little car. But that was the only car I owned clean up until the time, I guess we were married about a year before we bought our first car. Other than that, that's just me and public transportation and Shanks Mare. That's how we got around.
I always remember these stories growing up of you were talking about high school. I guess it wasn't always your hood, but you're always under the hood of a car, it seemed like.
Yeah, that's true. Mostly it was Jack's car. Cars, I should say, plural. We had a lot of fun with those. And of course, like I said, at that point, we were in the midst of the real car phenomenon. Everybody was into cars, all sizes and shapes, and the horsepower race was on at that point. They were coming off of small, mostly 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder cars into the V8s. Of course, Ford always had a V8, but they were, like lawnmower engines. They were V8s, but they had no real oomph to them. So they started, and of course then Chevy and Chrysler and a lot of the others got into the big V8 engines. So it was on. Yeah, cars were in. People were racing everything up and down streets, and drag racing in streets was not something that the kids in the 90s and 2000s brought about. Used to be a lot of that going on.
Did you do it?
No, I never had a car that was worth running. But we used to have fun with it. The very first car that Jack had was, there was an elderly gentleman at the end of his street who gave up his driver's license. He had a 1941 Ford Coupe, mint condition, the man. So he sold it to them, and we ran it for a little while. And I wasn't with him today. He was coming back from the shore. I think his parents were down the shore. He was coming back from the shore, and the engine just let go on him. So we had it towed back, and we sat around there, wondering now, what do you do now? I mean, this is a little bit beyond the normal, fixing a set of brakes or something. What do you do now the engine's shot? So fortunately, we knew a few gearheads that were kind of loose in the middle and tied in the middle and loose at both ends. And this one kid, Eddie, had a 48 Mercury, which he had reworked. Nice. It was really a fast car. Unfortunately, he wasn't a very fast driver. It's a case where the horsepower outran the horse sense. And anyway, he wrecked the car. And his father said, "That's it. He said, no more cars. So he had to sell it. So we bought it. The engine was in mint condition. Engine transmission, which is what we wanted. So we towed it down in front of my house, and we rigged up something and took the engine out of it. Took the engine out of Jack's old car, and had the old engine from his car and the other car towed away to the junkyard somewhere. So then we hauled Jack's car out with the engine in the trunk out to Bill's. Here comes Bill Quinn back into the picture again, and reinstalled that engine in there, which of course was at that time far more horsepower than that car ever thought it would ever see. And the guys out there were very good. They were top notch. By this time, the 56, 57 cars were just about on the market, so they were a lot of horsepower. That's the first time I ever remember going 100 miles an hour sitting in the back seat of a convertible. Bill had a 56 Ford convertible, beautiful car. And at that time, you had two options on a car. If you bought an automatic transmission, you got one size engine, slightly larger. If you bought the manual transmissions were extremely common in those days. You had to take a lesser size engine. Well, Bill's father apparently knew the guy that owned the Ford agency, so he's got the standard transmission, of course, with the biggest engine they had, and worked on it from there. I have no idea what kind of horsepower he had in this thing. But anyway, we hauled it out there, and between Bill and this fellow Larry Paris, and a couple other guys, we got the engine slapped in about 2 nights' work. Transmission all hooked up. So Bill says, "Well, look, let's take it out for a spin, make sure it's working before we do the final hookups." By final hookups, we mean there was no gas pedal; it was only a rod sticking through the floor, and we didn't have the exhaust system hooked up yet. He said, "Before we do that, let's make sure this thing runs." Okay, let's go. So we pushed it out as a driveway. I got to remember, so this is a very quiet suburban neighborhood, all single, beautiful stone single homes. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't find out this till later, a block down the street was the chief of police. So anyway, we pushed out in the street. Larry comes up behind us. Bill's driving. I'm operating the gas pedal. This is a verbal communications. So we start down the street. Of course, he pops the clutch and the engine fires up. Well, with no exhaust system. So we're boogieing down the street, shall I say, and he told me, he says, "Leave it go. Just take your foot off the gas." He put it in neutral. We just coasted past his house. We eventually came back, hooked it all up. That car ran great. We did a lot of driving with that car. The unfortunate side of that, there's always unfortunate sides of stories. He sold that car later. There was another fellow he met that had a much newer car, Ford, and he sold that to get the money to buy the newer car, which was much nicer condition. Unfortunately, the fellow that bought it killed himself with it. If you ever come up the area around Clark's Park, just west of the University, Pennsylvania, down there, the trolley car line that runs there makes almost a 90-degree bend as it comes in, as it heads west, and he was running alongside of it and just missed the turn. So yeah, that was a sad story. Not because of the car, but of course because of the individual. The car was just another piece of junk. So yeah, we had anyway. Yeah, this was all mostly high school, I guess. At this point, we weren't junior high. Junior high school, like I said, it wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Although making a few good friends, like I say, with Jack and this fella Herman, who he didn't graduate with us. He left and went to Interboro High School. His parents, I guess his father changed jobs or something anyway. Or he moved out of the city, maybe just got out of the suburbs. Got to get away from this bad influence. These guys are definitely not a good influence on my son. Can't be sure of that. But yeah, there were a lot of, there's some good friends anyway.
So, high school, you met Mom. How did you meet Mom? Where did you meet Mom?
Let me see now. That comes, where were we, 9th grade here. It wasn't in 9th grade. That was a great acclimation year. We were trying to get our feet on the ground from that circus we just left to people who really expected you to do work and perform and do all that sort of thing. And of course, in those days, in 8th grade, you kind of already picked your course of study, whether you're going to be an academic. There wasn't a lot of choices. There was academic mostly for those headed for college, or thought they were, whether they were or not. There was commercial. That was mostly, typing, steno type, shorthand type classes and that sort of thing. There were industrial trade courses there. They ran them all. They had sheet metal shop, electric shop, machine shop, and they had an auto shop in this complex of a city block. One of the buildings that remained there was a bowling alley, which went out of business. So the school district bought the building and made that their auto shop. And that was a great place. If you ever had repair work that you really got stumped with and couldn't do, you had to sign up and get on your name on a list, but they would fix your car for parts. That's all they charged you. Of course, then they figure they gained the skill of working on your jalopy. If they could solve your problem, they figure Anyway, they had these these trade art schools, none of which particularly appealed to me. Back in 8th grade, of course, you almost had to take academic or commercial. That was really your choices. There wasn't much at all at the junior high school level. So, of course, they said, well, everybody has to take a language. That's interesting. I had enough trouble with English. So, how am I going to get through English and a language? So I took Spanish. Seemed to be the easiest one. Often wondered, I got through first year Spanish. I guess that's pretty much easy to survive. 9th grade Spanish was terrible. A lot more grammar, a lot more, sentence structure and that sort of thing, which made little enough sense to me in English, much less in Spanish. But we had this wonderful teacher. Her name, Annette was her first name. I can't remember her last name. Doesn't matter, because she was getting married anyway. Was the point. So everybody was going to pass. She was just on cloud nine. She didn't care about So we all got out of there either by hard work or by good grace or whatever. And that was the end of my Spanish classes. I don't have a half a dozen words today I can tell you in Spanish. The rumor was that she was marrying, big car dealer. Can't remember his name now. Anyway.
Herbeck?
No. He was Penske.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know whether it's the Roger Penske or some of the Penske family, which is, who knows, the name could have been coincidental too.
Biff Penske.
Yeah, I don't know. I've often wondered, because I see him, of course, if you follow any of NASCAR at all, his name's always popping up. Always curious about that. He's about the right age, because this Spanish teacher wasn't a whole lot older than we were, So, excuse me. So anyway, that's where. Anyway, you had these two options. I certainly wasn't going into commercial because that was not something that guys did. So you took an academic course. There you were. That was okay by 8th grade. By 9th grade, I figured this is not where I'm going. I did not see me attending college. I was not a student particularly. Nothing to be proud of, but you got to know who you are. And college, I didn't quite see me getting, whether I could qualify or not was one thing. Whether I could afford it or not was another major issue in my life. So the high school I went to had this really unique kind of combination of called industrial arts, where you took shops, but you also took all the academics you needed to qualify for a college entrance. It wasn't as high at an English level, so we say, as the academic people had. But your mathematics were all there. You took your history courses. I guess they were pretty much the same. You still had your biology, and I didn't have chemistry in high school, though, for some reason. Anyway, but they aimed that so you could, if you took college entrance exams, you wouldn't be left out in the dark. And that was interesting. And they ran you through all the shops there. They worked in wood shop, I got the wood shop and the machine shop and the electrical shop. Never got into the auto. And then of course one of the shops there was drafting, which is where I found my niche, and that's where I got started in high school. Had a very good instructor. In fact, during those times, of course, with classes were always being juggled. There was never quite enough classrooms. They used to have study halls, and they come anytime they could know what to do with you. And classrooms were filled. They would juggle you into a study hall, which meant you met in the auditorium. Well, you only did that once in your life, and you figured, no, this is a real waste of time. I mean, even for high school students, this is a real waste of time. So, excuse me, dry. So I got to know the drafting teacher up there pretty well. I used to spend any free periods I had up there. He was good about that. So anyway, that's where I kind of kicked off there. And then of course, after high school, I had joined the Naval Reserve while I was in high school, because you could do that at 18.
Why did you do that?
It was a question my grandmother thought to ask me also, since my entire family is Army. Obviously, going back to the Civil War, and the colonels here, and who knows what over there, all kinds of brass, and and of course the two outstanding alums were my cousin, Jack, who we introduced before, who was a merchant marine, and myself, who joined the Navy. I don't know. There were certain things about it, because I always loved the sea and loved the water, so that was certainly part of it. And the whole concept of camping somewhere and living out in the dirt and the mud, and that I don't see the point in this. If you're going to serve in the military, and you had to serve at that point, so I figured, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. Why not do something anyway? So yeah, I joined the Naval Reserve, which was operating on the naval base at the time, and that was interesting. That was another whole phase of life. It just was. It was there, it was there. Not quite as useless as junior high school, but almost. Met some nice people there also. But anyway, we were back in high school.
We'll jump back to Navy.
Yeah.
High school. I don't think I realized you took drafting in high school.
Yeah.
So, what is drafting? You're talking about drafting, and then is that literally the point where you said, "This is what I want to do," or that stayed dormant for a while and then you came back to it? Like, explain how you got drafting, and what is it exactly?
Well, it's the putting on paper of things that you need. It's the language that's used between engineering, design, drafting puts it on paper, and people who manufacture, the actual shop people, can actually make it from. So you're kind of a translator between words and pictures, or words and final product. That was your job. And that seemed interesting to me. That seemed an interesting point, because it made use of all mechanical aptitudes, including electrical and/or mechanical. So that seemed interesting. And the instructor I had was very good. Once he understood that you were not just there to fill class requirements, he worked quite a bit with me on it. So and of course he was a designer in the field for years and came back to teach later on. Excuse me. So he was a great influence on me as far as that was concerned. At that time, I hadn't picked a vocation. No. In fact, one of the funny stories I thought in life was when I went down to join the Naval Reserve. Of course, they give you this whole battery of aptitude tests, and then they call you in and see where you fit, because you need a job description for them. They call it something different. I can't remember what it was now. So they called me in for an interview, and they looked at my scores and said, "Oh, look at this." He said, "You did really great in English." He said, which cracked your mother up to no end. I almost didn't graduate high school because of my bad English marks. Did well in English. What are you talking about? I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I'd also done well in math and some other things. So they run you through additional battery of tests. And one of the most interesting was they were looking for, the Naval Reserve unit down there was looking for a...
Hold on. Something's going awry.
Okay, I guess